Let me say something that most Bosnians won't agree with. I think Dayton was a great international agreement. I think it's a model which we could have used again in Afghanistan, in Iraq, in Libya. And my guess is that if, as I hope, the international community will come to an agreement with the region and the neighbors, underpinned by the great powers, America, Russia, as the context to resolve the Syrian crisis, it will look very like Dayton. What Dayton did brilliantly was reach some very untidy compromises in order to stop a war. And although those compromises now look difficult and sometimes wrong, I don't think there's anybody in Bosnia or anybody in the international community at that time who would not have accepted that untidiness in order to end a terrible war. Dayton was not a basis to build a state. It was a treaty to end a war. What we made of Dayton was the key thing. When I came here in my mandate, I said I thought Dayton was the floor, but it couldn't be the ceiling. It's what we built on Dayton that matters. We had to move beyond Dayton, and we did. We moved beyond Dayton in creating a single army, a single customs service, a VAT system. We moved beyond Dayton when we created a single intelligence services, a single statewide judiciary. These were essential for the building of the state. None of them were done by the high reps powers because I couldn't go beyond Dayton. They were done by courageous politicians, and there were some, many, who managed to argue that case through the democratic institutions of Bosnia and Herzegovina, and yes, including the Republic of Srpska National Assembly. The problem with Dayton is not Dayton. The problem with Dayton is our failure to continue to use Dayton as the base from which to build a functional state. And what depresses me, in truth, what breaks my heart, is the fact that all of those extraordinary first 10 years after Dayton, and it wasn't the international community who did this, it did it in partnership with brave, courageous Bosnian politicians, built a state, or near state, that was regarded across the world as a fantastic success. And now, in the last 10 years, the second 10 years of Dayton, all that's been allowed to unravel. And so what started off as a dynamic of integration has been reversed into a dynamic of disintegration. That's the tragedy. It's not Dayton. It's our failure to build on Dayton. That is the tragedy in Bosnia. I think it can be recovered. I believe it can be recovered. But only if now the ordinary people of Bosnia get involved and say that the politicians who have led us into the impasse, into the cul-de-sac, into the one-way street, going in the wrong direction, cannot be allowed to do so any longer. The international community will not do this. They haven't the will. They're interested, their attention is on other matters. It's now up to the people of Bosnia and Herzegovina, especially the youth of Bosnia and Herzegovina, to build a different future, to say this is not the way to go. What were the successes of my mandate? I think it's best to leave others to make that judgment. But by the way, it wasn't my mandate. It was a mandate in which we worked together with Bosnian politicians. Dragan Čavić, I have the very highest regard for. He paid with his political career, but he had a genuine vision of what Bosnia could be and took great and courageous steps to lead his people towards that. Adnan Terzic, who had a very clear idea of the Bosnia he wanted to build, he would always say for his son Tariq. I have never worked with a better team in my life than I was fortunate to have in OHR. And I have only rarely worked with politicians who had a clearer view of what their country could be and took risks to try and achieve it than the people I worked with at the time. So don't look at this, whatever successes we achieve, as my success. They were actually a success between a partnership between the international community that helped their Bosnian friends to achieve the only future this country can have. And if that's been sacrificed since then, and I'm bound to say I think it has, then that's a tragedy.